9 months into dating, my girlfriend demanded marriage. To her, waiting even a few more months meant I didn't love her. To me, it meant protecting myself from a mistake I couldn't undo. At first, I thought it was just impatience. But the more she pushed, the clearer it became. This wasn't only about love. Her family was circling me like vultures, hinting at responsibility and security the moment I stepped into their house. That's when I realized this marriage wasn't just a relationship. It was a transaction, and I was supposed to be the bank. I'm 44 years old, and I've seen enough life to know that rushing into big commitments usually ends badly. I'd been dating a woman, 41, for just under a year. At first, things were simple. We enjoyed each other's company, went out for dinners, watched movies at her place. I wasn't looking for games, and I appreciated that she didn't seem to be either. But around the 8-month mark, her tone shifted. What started as casual conversations about the future turned into direct questions. So, when are we getting married? I didn't panic. I told her I wanted marriage too, but not yet. I said something reasonable. Give me at least a year. Let's reach 12 or 14 months together, and then we can seriously talk marriage. That felt fair. Marriage, to me, is a lifetime contract. You don't sign that after a handful of seasons together. You take the time to see someone in different circumstances, meet their family, understand how they really operate. But she didn't take it well. Instead of nodding and agreeing, she looked hurt. She told me it felt like I was putting her on trial. I explained again, I wasn't against marriage. I just wanted time. Her response? I'm already ready. Why aren't you? That stuck with me. Why was she in such a rush? At first, I chalked it up to age. Maybe she felt like the clock was ticking. We'd both decided kids weren't part of our plans, so there was no biological deadline pressing us. Still, every week she brought it up again. Each time, her frustration grew. Then I started noticing how often her family's opinions were woven into the conversation. My mom keeps asking when it's happening. My brother says a real man doesn't waste time. My uncle thinks it's disrespectful to keep me waiting. Those weren't harmless comments. They were pressure points. And when I visited her family gatherings, the atmosphere matched. Jokes about weddings, when's the date, questions, smirks passed between relatives. It wasn't friendly teasing. It felt like they were cornering me. I tried to stay calm. I told myself maybe this was just cultural, maybe families always push like this. But then I overheard something that turned my stomach. Her brother, after a few drinks, joked that once we were married, things would get easier for everyone. Easier how? He didn't explain, but the way the table went silent made it obvious enough. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't impatience. This was pressure with a purpose, and I needed to figure out whether I was falling in love or falling into a trap. The shift didn't come with a big fight. It came one evening over takeout. We were sitting on her couch, half watching some crime show, when she put her food down and said, almost casually, "If we're not married by the end of the year, I don't think I can stay in this relationship." At first, I thought she was joking. The delivery was calm, her eyes fixed on the screen. But when I looked over, she wasn't smiling. She meant it. I tried to respond lightly. We've been together 8 months. A couple more won't kill us. Her jaw tightened. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one waiting. That line stuck in my head. Waiting for what? We both agreed kids were off the table. We both had jobs, homes, independence. What exactly was the race against time here? I told her I wasn't against marrying her. I repeated the same thing I'd been saying. I just wanted us to have a full year under our belts. See each other through holidays, family events, even a rough patch or two. I wasn't dragging my feet. I was making sure the ground was solid before building a house on it. She didn't accept that. A man who really loves a woman doesn't need that long to know. That one stung, not because it was true, but because it was manipulative. Love isn't the same as marriage. Plenty of men have loved women they should never have married. And plenty of rushed marriages end with lawyers counting the money. But I didn't say that. I kept calm, told her I respected her feelings, and asked her to respect mine. That was when the mood started to sour between us. Every little disagreement, no matter how unrelated, circled back to the marriage issue. If I was tired after work and didn't want to go out, it became, "You're not committed enough." If I said I wanted to save for a vacation before talking about rings, it became, "You don't want to invest in us." It wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a weapon. The worst part was how quickly her family joined the chorus. A week after that takeout night, She invited me to dinner with her parents. I walked in, shook hands, tried to be polite. Half an hour later, her mother leaned across the table and asked, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "So when's the wedding?" I laughed it off, but the room went quiet. Everyone was waiting for me to answer. My girlfriend's eyes were locked on me, daring me to say something definitive. I gave the same answer I'd given her. "We're building towards it, but I want to make sure everything's right before we take that step." Her father nodded. Her brother smirked. My girlfriend scowled. And right then, I realized this wasn't just about her anymore. I was under trial, in front of a jury I never asked for. After that dinner, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I saw her family, the subject of marriage came up. Not in a friendly, "we're excited for you" way, but in a probing, pointed way. At her cousin's barbecue, one of her uncles pulled me aside with a beer in his hand. "You know," he said, "a good man doesn't keep a woman waiting. Time has a way of slipping away, and regrets last forever." His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. I nodded politely, but inside I thought, "I don't even know you. Why are you lecturing me about my relationship?" Then came the group dinners. At one of them, her brother leaned back in his chair, arms folded, and said, "So, what's the holdup?" "My sister's ready. You're dragging this out for what doubts?" The table went quiet. My girlfriend's cheeks flushed. I tried to diffuse it. "It's not doubts. I just believe in taking time to make sure a marriage lasts." Her brother smirked. "Sounds like cold feet to me." That was the first time I felt genuinely cornered. I wasn't just dating her anymore. I was under scrutiny from her entire clan. And they weren't asking questions to understand. They were applying pressure, testing how much I'd bend. The second red flag came later that night, when her father poured himself a whiskey and said almost offhandedly, "Marriage brings stability, especially for families. Makes it easier to deal with other things." I asked what he meant. He waved his hand and muttered something about financial challenges, how marriage helps families pool resources, support each other, all that. The words sounded nice, but the meaning underneath hit me hard. They weren't talking about love or commitment. They were talking about security, about money. That suspicion grew stronger when I overheard her mother whispering to her in the kitchen, "Once you're married, things will settle down." I couldn't hear every word, but the tone was urgent, almost desperate. On the drive home, I asked her point blank if there was something going on with her family finances. She snapped at me. "Why do you always have to twist everything? Can't you just believe I want to marry you because I love you?" I wanted to believe that. God, I really did. But the weight of all those little comments, the stares at the dinner table, the whispered conversations, they were like stones piling up on my chest. I didn't say much after that. I just stared out the window, thinking. Love wasn't the question. The question was whether I was about to sign myself into a contract that included not just her, but her entire family's problems. And the more I thought about it, the less it felt like coincidence. The confirmation came sooner than I expected. One Saturday, we were at her parents' place again. It was supposed to be a simple family lunch, but as usual, the conversation drifted back to marriage. I kept my answers polite, but inside I was grinding my teeth. Then, after a few drinks, her brother let something slip. He laughed too loudly at a joke, leaned toward me, and said, "Once you're married in, man, things will get easier for everybody." I froze. "Easier how?" I asked. He waved his hand, already reaching for another beer. "You know, stability, bills, obligations. You'll see." The room went quiet for a beat too long. Her mother cleared her throat. Her father suddenly changed the subject. And that silence said more than any words could. On the drive home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "What did your brother mean by that?" She stiffened. "You're reading into things again." "No," I said firmly. "That wasn't a slip of the tongue. He meant something. Tell me." Her voice rose. "Why can't you just accept that I want to marry you? Why do you always need some hidden explanation?" That was the first real fight we had. Not a spat, not bickering, an all-out fight. Her words cut sharp. "You think I'm trying to trap you? You think my family is using you?" I didn't shout back. I just said, quietly, "I think there are things I don't know, and I'm not about to sign a contract blind." She crossed her arms, staring out the passenger window. The silence between us was thick enough to choke on. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the brother's words in my head. Things will get easier. Easier for who? And why did it depend on me marrying her? The next day, I got my answer, by accident. She left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she was showering. I wasn't snooping, but the email notification popped up bold on the screen. It was from her brother. Subject line, payment due. The preview line read, "We can't keep this up. Once she's married, things will." She came into the room just as I leaned over. Her eyes went wide when she saw me glance at the screen. She slammed the laptop shut so fast it nearly clipped her fingers. I didn't even need to read the rest. I already knew. This wasn't about love moving too slowly. This was about money moving too fast. Her family was drowning, and I was supposed to be the lifeline. The problem was, I don't swim into drowning waters just because someone waves. That was my first moment of absolute clarity, and it scared the hell out of me. It happened on a Tuesday night. She'd had a rough day at work, something about a project falling through and her boss chewing her out. I was making dinner, trying to keep things calm, when she came through the door, dropped her bag, and slammed it against the wall. Before I could ask what was wrong, she snapped, "I can't do this anymore." I set the pan down slowly. "Do what? Wait." Her eyes were blazing, her voice sharp. "I've been patient, I've been clear, and still you refuse to commit. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to stand in front of my family, month after month, and have to explain why we're not engaged?" The words hit like a hammer, but there was something more in her tone, panic. Not just disappointment, not just frustration. Pure, raw panic. I tried to stay calm. "We've been together 9 months. I've told you, by 12 or 14, I'll be ready." That's not refusal. That's being careful. She laughed bitterly. "Careful? No, you're stalling. You don't love me enough to want me now." That one cut deep. Not because it was true, but because it was a weapon she knew would hurt. I stared at her, really stared. She was shaking, pacing, her hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just a bad day at work spilling over. This was fear. Fear of something bigger than us. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked quietly. She froze. For a second, her face softened. Then she doubled down. "You're paranoid. You make up conspiracies because you're too scared to step up like a man." That was the crack I couldn't ignore. I'd been around long enough to know when someone was lying to protect themselves or hiding something to protect others. I didn't yell back. I didn't match her fire. I just said, "Love isn't proven by rushing into marriage. Love is proven by honesty. And right now, you're not being honest with me." Her face twisted, and for a moment, I thought she might admit it. Instead, she stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat down at the table, dinner forgotten, and just listened to the silence on the other side of the wall. My chest felt heavy, like someone had put a weight on it, and walked away. That night, I barely slept. Every word, every fight, every dinner with her family replayed in my head. The pattern was too clear now. The pressure wasn't about romance. It was about survival, and I was supposed to be the safety net. And here's the thing. Once you see a trap, you can't unsee it. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting. She came out of the bedroom, hair a mess, eyes swollen from crying, but she didn't say a word. She grabbed a mug, poured herself coffee, and sat across from me. I let the silence hang for a moment, then said, "We need to talk. And this time, I'm not dodging, and neither are you." She looked at me warily. "About what?" "About this marriage push. About your family. About what's really going on." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer, so I kept going. "I've told you what I want. 12 to 14 months. That's not unreasonable. That's a man making sure he doesn't step into a lifelong commitment blind. But every time I say that, you twist it into you don't love me. That's not true. What's true is this: I won't be forced. Not by you. Not by your family. Not by anyone." Her eyes flashed, but I didn't let her cut in. I leaned forward. "Marriage isn't a deadline. It's not a life raft for your family. It's not a financial fix. And if that's what you need from me, then you've chosen the wrong man." That hit her. She flinched, like the words physically landed. "You think so little of me," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, I think enough of myself to draw the line. I know what I bring to the table: loyalty, stability, hard work. I don't sign my life over just because people glare at me across a dinner table. If you love me, you'll give me time. If you don't, then be honest enough to walk away." For once, she didn't snap back. She sat in silence, staring into her coffee, her leg bouncing under the table. I could see the storm behind her eyes. Finally, she muttered, "You make it sound so cold." "Reality is cold," I said. Better to face it now than in divorce court later. That was the moment I stopped being the defendant in their trial. I wasn't explaining myself anymore. I was setting terms. And deep down, I think she knew I meant every word. The rest of that day was uneasy silence. She texted less, avoided eye contact. But I didn't chase. I'd drawn my boundary, and for the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I wasn't against marriage. I was against being cornered into one for reasons that had nothing to do with love. And if that meant losing her, then maybe that was the price of keeping my dignity intact. It didn't take long for my stance to ripple outward. A week later, I got the proof. Her brother called me directly, something he'd never done before. No small talk, no pleasantries. "Listen," he said, "my sister's been patient. You're a grown man. If you're serious, stop wasting time and do the right thing." I let him finish, then asked, "And what exactly is the right thing?" "Marry her," he shot back. "She deserves security." That word again. Security. It wasn't about love. It was about money, stability, resources. I could hear it dripping in every syllable. I stayed calm. I don't take orders about my relationship. From anyone. He cursed under his breath, then muttered, "You'll regret this," and hung up. I told her about the call that evening. She didn't deny it. She just said, "He's protective. He wants what's best for me." "No," I replied. "He wants what's best for himself. And he thinks I'm the ticket." Her face darkened. That's not fair. But it was fair. More than fair. Because it wasn't just her brother. At the next family dinner, the pressure was blunt. Her father leaned across the table, voice low but firm. "A man doesn't hesitate when he knows what he wants. Unless he doesn't really want it." I felt every eye on me. The air was thick with expectation. My girlfriend sat stiffly, watching me like a hawk. I set my fork down. "What I want," I said evenly, "is a marriage built on trust. Not deadlines. Not ultimatums. If that doesn't fit your timetable, that's your problem. Not mine." You could have heard a pin drop. Her mother gasped softly. Her brother muttered something under his breath. My girlfriend flushed red, her hands trembling in her lap. That night, on the drive home, she exploded. "Do you have any idea how humiliated I was? Sitting there while you challenged my entire family." I looked at her, calm as stone. "Your family challenged me first." I answered. She turned away, silent, but her breathing was sharp and ragged. For me, though, a strange calm settled over my chest. For weeks, I'd been the one under fire, defending myself. Now the tables had turned. I wasn't afraid of their disapproval anymore. If anything, it clarified everything. This wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction disguised as love. And I wasn't about to pay the price. By the time the next weekend rolled around, I knew the situation couldn't drag on. We were circling the same fight over and over. Her insisting I wasn't committed, me insisting I wouldn't be cornered. Something had to give. We met at my place. I cooked dinner, trying to keep the atmosphere calm. But halfway through the meal, she pushed her plate away and said flatly, "So what's it going to be? Either you set a date, or we're wasting each other's time." No build-up. No pretense. Just the ultimatum laid out, clean as steel on a table. I put my fork down and looked her dead in the eyes. "All right," I said. "Here it is. I will marry you, but only when I'm ready. Not a day before. If that's not good enough for you, then you should walk away now." Her mouth fell open slightly. She hadn't expected me to be so direct. She tried to argue. "Do you realize how much this hurts me? Do you realize what it feels like to be treated like an option?" I shook my head. "No. What hurts is being treated like a wallet with legs. What hurts is watching a woman I care about let her family dictate her future. You think I don't see it? The pressure, the money talk, the way your brother slips up when he drinks? I'm not blind. I know why they want this rushed, and I refuse to be dragged into it." For a moment, silence filled the room. She stared at me, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. Then the mask cracked. "So that's it. You think my family's using you? You think I'm using you?" I didn't flinch. "I think love doesn't need ultimatums. And if marriage is the only proof you'll accept, then we were doomed from the start." Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood. She grabbed her purse with shaking hands. "I can't do this," she said, voice breaking between anger and desperation. "I deserve someone who knows what he wants." I stayed seated, calm. "Then go find him. Because I'm not signing my life away to solve your family's problems." She froze at the door, like she expected me to call her back. But I didn't. I couldn't. She left, the door slamming shut behind her. and for the first time in weeks, the apartment was quiet. I sat back down at the table. The food had gone cold, but I didn't care. I felt strangely free. Not happy, not triumphant, just free. Because the truth was, I hadn't lost her. I dodged a bullet. A couple of months passed. At first, there was silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. Part of me wondered if she'd eventually reach out, maybe to apologize or at least to try again. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't going to happen. Then, one evening, a buddy of mine sent me a screenshot from Facebook. There she was, smiling arm in arm with another man. The caption? "Can't wait to spend forever with you." It had been barely 8 weeks. At first, I felt a sting. Not jealousy, exactly, but a kind of disbelief. 9 months with me. Endless arguments about waiting a few more, and now she was promising forever to someone she'd known for what, days? Weeks? But then the sting faded, and all I felt was confirmation. Everything I'd suspected was true. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about love. It was about urgency, pressure, and getting someone, anyone, to lock things down. Word traveled quickly. A mutual acquaintance let slip that her brother had been bragging about how things were finally looking up now that she was engaged again. I didn't need details. I could fill in the blanks. And honestly, I was relieved. Relieved it wasn't me sitting in that chair, smiling for a photo while a family silently counted on my bank account to plug their holes. Relieved I'd trusted my gut instead of giving in to guilt and manipulation. It's funny, when you're younger, you think love is about passion, grand gestures, sweeping promises. But when you've lived a bit, you realize it's about something much simpler: peace. Knowing the person beside you isn't dragging you into chaos. Knowing you can close your eyes at night without wondering what you're really paying for. I don't regret walking away. If anything, I regret almost letting myself get cornered. These days, I've taken a step back from dating. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm careful. I want someone who brings calm, not complications. Someone who understands that marriage isn't a finish line you sprint toward. It's a foundation you build steady, brick by brick. If she finds what she's looking for with someone else, good for her. But I know this much. I'd rather eat dinner alone at a quiet table than sit surrounded by people smiling at me with their hands out. Because love without honesty isn't love. It's a contract. And I don't sign contracts with hidden terms. Looking back, I don't see it as a failed relationship. I see it as a close call. If I'd caved to the pressure, I'd be locked into a marriage built on desperation and debt. Instead, I walked away with my freedom and my peace intact. And that's the lesson I'd pass to anyone listening. Never let someone rush you into a lifetime decision. If it's real, it can wait. If it can't wait, then maybe it was never about love in the first place. Do I still believe in marriage? Absolutely. But not as a bandage for family problems. Not as proof of commitment. And definitely not as a way to buy approval from people who see you as a solution, not a partner. So if you've ever been in my shoes, I want to know, what would you have done? Would you have given in just to keep the peace? Or would you have drawn the line? Even if it meant losing someone you cared about? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your perspective. And if you've ever dodged a bullet of your own, tell me your story.